talk to your girlfriends, like talk to your parents, like talk to your aunts, like talk to the women in your life that have gone through similar things. And I feel like the more that we talk about it, the more that there's like less of that taboo, and
Yes.
that it just becomes like normal.
Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim, the podcast. I am your host, Thais Sky. I'm happy to be here for another week of amazing conversations. This week, I have the honor and privilege of having a conversation with a dear friend. Her name is Katie Bressack. She is a women's health coach. And listen, I keep talking about this on the podcast, but it is quite sad how little I knew about my own health in terms of uterus care, in terms of vagina care, in terms of, hormone care, until very, very recently. And one of the reasons why I've started to really understand and own my body is because of Katie and because of this friendship. And Katie has such a deep passion for supporting women with their hormone health. And she's such an expert in this conversation. So I'm really, really excited to have her on. But first, we got to recognize that last week was election day in the United States. And there was, I guess, a little bit of a wave. Democrats took back the House. We still have our president, though, so there's that to grapple with for at least another 2 years, hopefully no more than that. And, here's the thing. It's like, okay, election's over. That huge action was over. Now what? Where are we? How are we feeling? It's really important for us to tune into what's happening in our hearts, what's happening in our homes. How are we doing? How is our body doing? I was having a conversation with a friend today. When we're talking about our body, particularly women's hormones, actually, it takes time. It takes time for our body to regulate itself. Our mind may be regulated much faster than our bodies. But let's see if we can practice honoring the time, honoring the pace of our body is what I'm trying to say. Because our body has so much wisdom. Our body has so much wisdom. And I know that our body doesn't feel safe for everybody. Some of us, we were born in bodies that didn't connect with the gender that we identified with. And that can feel really scary and unsafe for a multitude of reasons. Maybe you're born in a body that from a very young age was taken away from you because of society, because of parental lack of care, because you were raped and beaten and abused in some way that made you disassociate and have this physical body mean really bad things. I honor that. And in this conversation with Katie, we talk a lot about connecting to our bodies. But before we can talk about connecting with our bodies, we have to really own and understand why we disconnected. And when our society is so fast paced and there's so much energy and there's so much movement and so much anxiety, particularly I think now more than ever, there's so much communication, so much connection online, social media, that it feeds into our anxiety. And we're going a million miles per hour in our heads about what's happening in this country, what's happening in this world, what's happening with climate change, that it's very easy for us to continue to stay disconnected from our bodies. And I believe that it is in that reclamation and that reconnecting into your body in a way that feels good and in alignment for you. Whatever that means, whatever that looks like for you, doing what feels good to allow yourself to move in this body. It can give us such spaciousness. It can remind us that there's a different pace that we can be moving through. I definitely think that our body holds so much wisdom. It's the seat of our emotions. It's how we know how to process the emotions that we're experiencing. It's how we know, what our unconscious is experiencing, which is connected to our emotions. Our body is tremendously wise. And we get to tap into that whenever we want. Our society, our culture has tried really hard to take away our connection with our body for all sorts of reasons, for a multitude of reasons. There's always reasons, right? But now we get to reclaim it. We get to come back. We get to drop in. And I have various episodes on the podcast around body and reclaiming our body, whatever that looks like for you. Because I believe that our body is the center of our wisdom. And no matter what your body looks like, no matter what it's capable of, no matter what, no matter what this meat sack looks like for you, there is a way that you can make it your own. And it's in making it your own that you really get to tap into something special in your life. And so I know there's a lot going on politically, and I encourage you to stay activated and to stay engaged, because it's important to continue to be having these conversations. And let's make sure that we're also tapping into the wisdom that is here, tapping into the wisdom that is our body, listening to the pace that our body wants us to move in. Okay, so let me introduce you to Katie Bressack. Katie is an award-winning health coach who specializes in women's hormonal health. With Katie's support, the women she counsels prepares their bodies for pregnancy, increased energy levels, gets their period back on track, loses weight, eats healthier, and maintains a balanced mood. Katie runs a successful one-on-one coaching business and has group programs that have helped hundreds of women support their health and hormones. Katie believes every woman can feel healthy and vibrant by making the best nutritional and lifestyle changes that support their body in the best way possible. So you can sign up for her Balance Your Hormones guide through the show notes. And that's 5 easy steps to gain energy and reduce sugar cravings for good. You can hang out with her in her Happy Healthy Hormones Facebook group. You can connect with her via her blog, Instagram, or Facebook. So there's all sorts of ways that you can connect with her through her show notes, through my show notes. And Katie lives in Los Angeles with her husband and dog Piper. When Katie is not supporting women, you can find her on her yoga mat, watching movies, reading, walking on the beach, hiking, and spending time with friends. And you can learn more about Katie at katiebressack.com. Okay, so while you're listening to this conversation, I would love for you to think about how you've lost your power with your body in our society. Do you feel empowered around your reproductive health? Do you feel connected with your hormones on at least weekly, monthly, or daily basis? What would you like your relationship with your hormones to look like? And what are some steps that you can actively take to connect with your body in a deeper way? Katie Bressack. I don't know why it's taken us a year to get you on the podcast, but we should be ashamed of ourselves for it having been a year before I've had you on the podcast. For those of you listening, Katie and I are really, really dear friends. She was one of my first friends in LA, and it's just such a treat to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
I go to Katie for all of my, Katie, is it normal that this is happening in my period? Is this normal? What do I eat? How do I handle this? So we're going to be picking Katie's brain today all about women's hormones and women's health. And one of the first things that I like to start is the idea of women's hormones never turned me on. I'm not inspired by those words. To me, those words mean nothing. But they mean something in terms of how I'm feeling on a daily basis. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about how you got into women's health, women's hormones, women's nutrition, and what tell me just the high level of like why we should care about women's hormones.
Oh God, such a loaded question. No
pressure.
I know, right? Well, this is the thing. I don't know about you, but I never ever thought about my hormones. And the only reason I thought about my hormones was once a month when I got my period.
Yep.
Right? Growing up, like when I got my period, it was like not even a 5-minute conversation with my mom. And that was like it.
Yep.
And then it was just this ongoing realization that like every month, the day before my period, I would always fight with my parents, or I would always start crying. I was super emotional. And looking back, even with relationships and different things that would happen in my life, I'm like, oh my God, it was because I was getting my period that I was not acting in the same way I was acting the day before, right? Mm-hmm. So when I kind of connected all the dots was, in my late 20s, early 30s when I really felt my hormones more than before. But still, I was still just focusing on my period. And I was like, there's got to be something deeper than this. Like, why am I feeling so out of sorts? Like, I felt so out of body. And I had gotten to the point where I was eating healthier. I was moving my body in a healthier way. And I still wasn't feeling in my body. I felt like very out of body often. And that's when I was like, okay, there's got to be something more. And I started really looking into hormones, and I was like, oh shit, they do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They regulate everything. Like, so not only my moods, but my metabolism, my energy, just, you know, how I was feeling really super confident and sexy one day. And then the other day I'm like, oh my God, I can't even put these jeans on my body. You know, it's a lot of different things like that. So it's very interesting when I started diving in, because I was just so super focused on my period and trying to figure out, like, how can I not be such a hot mess like the day or two before my period. That was kind of my goal.
Yeah.
And then once I started feeling like less out of, I don't even know how to describe it, like out of body is like the way I always describe it, I guess. I was like, okay, so how can I like really think about what else is going on throughout the month, not just the day before my period.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like this is important information. And the fact that the words women's hormones turns me off, I think is so cultural. And
Mm-hmm.
this idea that, you know, women's periods are a nuisance, like they're annoying, they're to be kind of ignored as much as possible. And it's embarrassing when we get our periods. I mean, even now when I'm in, you know, school or when I'm in public and I have to go to the bathroom to put on a tampon or change my pad, I like conceal my pad, and I try to make as less
Mm-hmm.
crinkly noise as possible when I'm opening up the wrapper. And it's just so embarrassing that I have this stuff going on. Or whenever, you know, I have my period and I leak overnight, and if there's a guy in my bed, oh, that's so embarrassing, like what is he gonna think? And it's just, I think it's a little heartbreaking that
Oh
this
my
is a
God. Yeah.
relationship with an essential part of our body and our process.
Totally. I mean, I would cry because I was the first of all my friends to get my period. And I would like cry to my mom, like, I can't go to school today. Like, you can't make me, like, I can't
Mm.
do it. And she would let me stay home from school a lot of times on the first day of my period. And I was like, it was because I felt like people knew I was wearing a pad because I wasn't allowed to
Mm.
wear tampons yet. I was like, I was only in like sixth grade, you know, so my mom wouldn't let me, and I was like, I can't do it. Like, it's so, and that also like middle school, like that time of your life when everything's changing so rapidly and your hormones really turn on, you know, that was just like a lot for me. But it's very cultural, and it's not just here in the States, like it's worldwide. I mean, you look at other countries where girls can't even go to school when they have their period. Like, they're
Yeah.
not allowed to bleed with other people. They have to be by themselves. You know, it's a deeper thing than just
Western
knowing that,
culture.
yeah, and just knowing like, oh God, they can see or hear the pad. And honestly, realistically, no one was paying any attention to me. It's
Right.
all like in my
And
own.
everybody has their own experience with
Mm-hmm.
what is going on with their period. Yeah, and so it breaks my heart that only in the past 5 years have I really reclaimed what my period means to me and what women's hormones mean to me, and how much of my mood swings and my hunger and how I feel in my body is related to something that I know so little about.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where when we are like, my period is so powerful, like when we understand how to go, pun intended, with the flow, right? And we're like, you know what? I'm going to, like, the first 2 weeks of my cycle, like, I'm going to feel different than the last 2 weeks of my cycle. When I'm ovulating, like, I'm going to be glowing. Like people are just going to instantly want to give me what I want. Like I don't even really have to ask for it. Like I'll just get what I want. Like if I want a raise, like that's when I should go ask for a raise. Or if you're working on something in your business, and you know, if we learn how to work with our body and with our hormones, it is so powerful, which is probably one of the main reasons why it's been not talked about, right? In such like the culture that we're in, you know, and just having it be more of the patriarchy, right? And like, it's powerful. Like they know
Yes.
that women are very powerful. And when we are listening to our bodies, when we're listening to our intuition, when we're really going with how we feel, I mean, we can make amazing things just happen out of thin air.
Yeah. And instead, we're disassociated, we're disconnected. We
Mm-hmm.
see our monthly cycle as annoying. Oh, I'm bleeding again. Or we may feel relief the first day because it means that we're not pregnant. But then the following
Mm-hmm.
days, we are in so much pain, we're in cramping, we're, just feeling yucky. And so, how do we begin to change that relationship?
I think, you know, that's a really good point. I feel like, you know, if that's been your experience, right? Like you're like listening to this, well, I don't want hormones. I don't want to feel that way. But if we were to have no painful periods, like no cramping, you know, if we could just feel, and we actually took that time to rest, whatever that looks like. It doesn't mean you have to sit in bed and lay all day, but you know, maybe not over scheduling yourself, not running around, not working out, you know, also this mentality of like pushing ourselves hard every day of the month, even when we don't feel like it. Like if we were to kind of pull back when we had our periods, right? And if we were to eat all month long in a way that supported our periods, and you no longer had cramps, you no longer had brain fog or moodiness, like it wouldn't feel so disconnected, and it wouldn't feel like such a thing that happens to you, you know. All of us are on our own journeys. We all have personal things going on with our hormones, but most of the time, just by changing some small things, you can not have painful periods. And what if your period didn't mean pain? What if your period just meant,
Mm.
oh, I get to like come home straight from work, or I get to like not go crazy and work out today and just read a book and have some tea when I get home, right? Like if we kind of really start thinking about the time of the month where it's our time to kind of like come into ourselves. And if there was no pain associated with that, I mean, that would be so completely different for probably every single woman on this earth.
Well, I mean, the cool thing about our cycles is that we very much operate like the year calendar with fall, winter, spring, and
Mm-hmm.
summer. And I think we forget that if we're summer the entire time, the entire month, if we're busy and active and pushing and striving the entire month, we're going to inevitably burn out. And when we burn out, it's going to hurt
Yeah.
physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually more than if we honor that every month we have these different cycles, we have these different needs. And can we take 3-4 days of our winter to slow down, like you said, to drink some tea, to come home and be with ourselves? And then imagine how much more we would be able to show up if we didn't have that pressure of having to show up the same way every single day.
Yes. And that's I love that you brought that up, because I think that's what's so interesting about where we are culturally right now, where we are expected to be the same person every single day.
Yes.
And it doesn't work like that for men and women, but especially women, you know, with our hormone changes. I mean, I feel it. Like some days I wake up and I'm like, I feel on, and other days I wake up, nothing's changed, and I feel different. And it's
Mm-hmm.
about honoring that change and being okay with that change, you know, because we've been so brainwashed, right? Even like you watch all the commercials for anything that has to do with tampons or pads or birth control. It's all about like not having to think about it, not having to worry about it, not have to be connected to it. But if we were to just be more connected to ourselves, and we would be like, oh, you know what, today, this is how I feel today. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
not trying to force ourselves to like be and feel differently. I mean, obviously sometimes you have to like jump up and down and like smile if you have a big meeting and just show face if you have to like do something for like a short period of time. But realistically, right, that just happens in our corporate culture. But then you can come back down from that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so helpful. That has been so helpful for me, is taking some of the pressure off of um, thinking that there's something wrong with me or something broken with me because I don't feel like showing up in the exact same way every day.
Mm-hmm.
And because men go through a cycle that's different than women, we compare ourselves a lot with men while they show up in this way. And because patriarchy, they're the ones that created our society. Of course, they didn't create society with women in mind. Um, so it makes sense that like when we feel emotional or when we feel moody, that we're chastised and we're, oh, are you getting a period soon? Right? It's seen as like a bad thing, when really what that means is that we're more sensitive, we're more attuned, we're more vulnerable, we're more interested in deep connections, we don't have to paint emotions as negative and as broken and as bad, and instead we can start to look at, well, where am I in my cycle? Does this make sense for where I'm at in my cycle? And if this is coming up for me, can I create space to be with it and tend to it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because men do have hormonal cycles. Okay. So men have 24-hour hormonal cycles.
Right.
So yeah, they put their head in the pillow, they're out.
Which is wild.
It's so crazy. It drives me completely crazy sometimes. So I've learned that I need to get in bed before my husband, or else I'm going to be pissed that he's sleeping before me.
Yep. Yep.
And then they wake up in the morning and they're ready to go. So that's how the whole corporate culture works as well, right? It's like that 9 to 5-ish, whatever mentality at this point. Where women, we have much longer cycles, right? We're like anywhere from 24, 35-day cycles. And so of course we're going to feel differently. And it's one of those things where understanding that you're going to feel different every day. And then when somebody says, oh, are you going to get your period? Or my husband's always like, why are you always so mean to me? I'm like, honey, I sent you a calendar invite. You know I'm getting my period tomorrow. You know that I
Wait,
just,
you send you send him a calendar invite when you're about to get your period?
oh yeah, because he like,
That's the
oh
most
yeah,
amazing thing I've ever heard.
it's what, because my husband and I get along very well. And it's always a day before my period comes when I'm just a little bit more irritable and agitated. And I'm like, don't touch me type of thing. So I send him a calendar invite. Like he knows it's coming.
That's
And
the
he's
best thing
surprised
I've ever heard.
every single month. Okay. They're like, I'm not. I'm like, honey, you know what's happening tomorrow. You know this is the same as it was last month. I know our memories are a little bit different, but I think it's like being okay even having that conversation with your whoever you live with, whether that's the
Mhm.
male or female, right? It's just being open and being like, yeah, I got my period today. Like I don't want to be rushing around this morning, or I don't want to have this conversation with you right now. But just being more open with that. Whether whoever it is that
Yeah.
you're with, I think it's part of our life. It's part of our cycle. It's part of who we are. And the more that we try to not talk about it and the more that we don't express how we're feeling, I feel like the more that our hormones actually like make us not feel as balanced, right? Because when we're trying to repress things, our body's going to get frustrated and like, no, like you need to feel this. Like, let's go through this. So it's kind of interesting when you actually think about it that way as well.
Yeah, I still am hung up. I love the fact that you send him a calendar invite. That's the best thing I've ever heard. And, something that I think goes with that is that you're not ashamed that this is just where you are. This is just what it looks like. You don't have to be apologetic. You don't have to be like hiding yourself or not taking up space or, denying that this is your experience. So since you know that this is what it's going to look like, you set other people up for success. You warn them, you let them know. And it's not to say that now you're entitled to like be a complete bitch, right? But it's like, that like because of my hormones, I'm more agitated, I'm more irritable, I'm more on edge. And so you don't have to change anything about your behavior if you don't want, but just know that this is what's coming up for me.
Exactly. It's just setting up expectations, right? Setting up
Exactly.
expectations for yourself. It's setting up
Yes.
expectations for, your partner. And, so sometimes when he looks at his calendar, he like will bring home some like chocolate.
Oh, good man.
you know, but it's like, it's one of those things where, I mean, he loves chocolate. He eats like most of it, but, it's just kind of one of those things where it's coming into yourself. It's coming into who we are as women. And I feel like we're in a really interesting place in society and in our lives right now where we are talking more about this. Like there are so many books. Like just last week, there were like 2 new books published about periods and about owning it and kind of talking about it. And I feel like it's such an important time for us as women to talk about it. How are you doing? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, how can I help you? How can I support you? And then have that really trickle down to the younger generation, having them feel more empowered and more educated about what's going on. I feel like in 5th grade, I don't know if you had this experience, but in 5th grade, they took all the girls into one room and we had to watch a video about, her name was Katie, getting her first period. And the boys were in the other room, like watching a movie. Like they should be together. Like everyone should be in the same room learning
100%.
about this biological thing that we all should
Affects
know
both
about.
people. It
Yes,
affects both
exactly.
people. Like
Yes.
it affects men, even though they may not menstruate. It affects them because they are in society with this other gender. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know we're talking a little bit gender binary right now, but if we want to create a functional society where all genders are placed on equal footing, then we must understand the needs of each other. And how can we understand the needs of each other if we're not even being educated? And, I don't even, I've shared this so many times on the podcast. Like, I've had such poor education around my uterus, around my vagina, like, such poor education. I mean, I didn't know that there's a difference between a vagina and a vulva until like 2 years ago. I was basically put on birth control. Well, I was not put on birth control. I chose to get on birth control when I was 18 years old. And I was pretty much on it for most of my 20s without even thinking about what it was doing or
Mm-hmm.
asking myself any questions about how birth control works, birth control pills.
Mm-hmm.
And like what it's doing to my body and how is it affecting my mood. I mean, there were no questions about it. It was just, I want to have sex, I get on the pill. It was not even like, okay, I want to have sex, what does it look like for the men to be,
Mm-hmm.
protective? What does it look like for me to be protective? What are my options? It was none of that. And I think that that is so heartbreaking because the statistics show that the younger you get put on birth control pills, the higher correlation is with depression. And yet we're putting teenage girls on birth control pills for things that aren't even related to the periods, like acne, like
Mm-hmm.
cramping, as opposed to giving them other like nutritional options or education of different ways that they can navigate their period. It's like, oh, no, just take this pill every day and you'll be fine and you'll be good to go for the rest of forever. And I think that that's so limiting and disempowering, to be frank.
Very disempowering. And oh God, that's a whole other podcast. But the crazy thing is that even as women get older, the only solution that most doctors have is to be put on the birth control pill
Wow.
for whatever is going on. I see a lot of new moms just, going through postpartum, which doesn't mean depression. I think that we associate postpartum with that, but just postpartum, like the fourth trimester, and just feeling like trying to rediscover who they are. And doctors are like just telling them to go back on the birth control pill and like numbing all of those feelings rather than like supporting them through that. With nutrition, with different herbs and supplements that are so, so helpful and so beneficial. But again, it goes back to that education piece. I really feel like, and even if you were to ask your doctor, like what the side effects are of birth control, they really don't necessarily know how
Yeah.
much it shuts down the hormones. Most people don't know, and I didn't really know this until like a few years ago, but like pill bleeds are not actual periods, but all
Yes.
doctors tell you is that you're getting your period every month.
Yes.
But it's
Yes,
not.
it's not. You're not actually ovulating. When I
Nope.
learned this, my mind was blown. And even though they say that there are no, negative, bad repercussions of hormonal birth control pills, I wonder, like, our body was created to ovulate and release an egg from the fallopian tubes, right? Like every single month. So what is happening if that process isn't happening? What's the repercussions of that? Like, we're not talking about that. And I can't imagine that it's no repercussions. I don't want to awfulize and say, oh, bad things will happen, but I can't imagine that there are no repercussions by preventing and blocking your body from doing what it's naturally like wanting to do.
Well, ovulation and progesterone it's one of the most important parts of hormones. Without that, it's good for your bone health. It helps when us age gracefully. It's so, so crucial for just the development over time of our bodies. Like it's honestly the most important thing for us is just ovulation. Like I'm always asking, like, really, when I'm working with my clients, like, are you ovulating? When are you ovulating? Are you ovulating every month? Like it's one of the most important things that we need to focus on. And it shuts down the most important part of our hormonal system in terms of, and for so many different things. I mean, it's kind of a lot
And
to explain, but
and also, I didn't know that. Like, for me, I did not care if I was ovulating or not until I got off the birth control pill, but I was still sexually active. And then the only reason why I cared about ovulation was to avoid having sex around that time to not get pregnant.
yeah.
Because that's all that we're told, right? Is ovulation is all about getting pregnant, which of course is one of the big functions of ovulation. But that's helpful to know that there are other important
There
factors.
are many other important factors. So
Yeah.
whether you decide to have children or not, it's not just about having children. It's about really supporting your body and making sure that your body is healthy. And we have hormones for a very, very important reason. We just don't have hormones, right? Like we need the progesterone and the estrogen as we get older. And I feel like a lot of women, especially that may be on the birth control pill until they're going through menopause, they get off the pill and they're like, oh my God, like what is going on? Like all of these things are shifting and changing, and and a lot of them don't have enough progesterone. Like they're so low in progesterone. So they feel very stressed and anxious because progesterone is what keeps your body calm. It's the calming hormone. So if we've been like shutting it down so for so long, of course we're going to feel that way. And of course menopause, which we need a new name, gets a really bad reputation, because a lot of women struggle with that because we haven't been able to support our bodies in the way that it needed to be supported. And then that happens. So there's a reason and there's a timeline of really supporting our body, supporting our hormones. And that's why I feel like just the education piece is so helpful, because the more you can, whatever decision you decide and you make is what is the best for you. But as long as you have all the information and that that there are other things that you can do if you're trying to prevent pregnancy, if that is the main goal of being on birth control, there are other things. It's just being very mindful and diligent, because it's just paying attention, because your ovulation can change every month, and there's different things that are going on. But condoms are actually more effective. I know most people hate them, but condoms are more effective than birth control is. Um, and I'm not even saying that birth control is the worst thing that you could do, but most of us are on it for way too long. It's kind of the moral of my long rant there.
Yeah. It's like we have to be, in order for us to reclaim our power in the world, we must pay attention, and paying attention to our bodies, to how our body works, learning about such a critical component of our bodily function is part of that reclamation. And understanding how to work in sync with our cycle is a part of that reclamation, because we want to create a world, at least I do. I want to create a world that is in alignment with how my body naturally works, because I believe that that's going back to nature. It's right, going back to how our planet works, and being in, what am I trying to say? I feel like we've added so much artificialness to block us from really being connected with how the cycles of our planet and the cycles of our body works. But if we believe that, that there was the evolution created this in the perfect way and in a perfect alignment with our needs, then who am I, my brain and society, tell me what's best for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see this all the time with a lot of my clients that have young girls who are going through puberty, and they just put them on the birth control pill. The doctor's like, okay, you got your period, here's the pill. It's like one step. It's like, wait a second, she's 11 years old. Like, is she really having sex right now? Is she having why is the reason? It's like this automatic thing that a lot of us are not questioning. And I think it just goes back to like just questioning, asking questions like, why are you putting young girls on this?
Yeah.
The crazy thing is that, sorry, they've made birth control for men, and there were a lot of studies, right? A lot of trials, and men were getting headaches.
Yeah.
So it wasn't approved by the FDA.
Yeah.
Well, so much of the birth control has such serious side effects for women's health, and we have way more side effects than just headaches with birth control. So I think that's another question we should be asking of, the birth control for men doesn't actually shut down any of the hormonal functions, where in women it does. So why is that not being questioned more, right? Like what's kind of again, it goes back to the society we live in, but I think these are more important questions of like, why is it just the women's responsibility?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, there's so many layers to this conversation that I want to make sure that I add. For example, access to birth control. We don't want to undervalue how critical having the choice of birth control has been instrumental to women being able to reclaim their lives. Right? Like, birth control pills has revolutionized our ability to go into the workplace and not be so worried about whether or not we're going to get pregnant. And so that has been a huge part of our liberation. And we can't undervalue that, because that was critical. It's just, we want to now be questioning everything, right? Because now we have the power, the time, the resources to be asking ourselves, okay, that was great for what it needed to do, but now what are my other options?
Yeah. And the technology has changed a lot of that, like, so there's a big difference. And again, I'm not saying birth control is bad. I'm just saying you need to know all the information so you can make the best decision for you where you are in your life right now.
Right.
And knowing that it's something that, knowing that if you're on it and all of a sudden your like mood starts shifting and you don't feel like you felt before, and people notice, and like that is a side effect, like maybe that's not the best thing for you. So it's just kind of being really in tune with your body, letting other people around you know that you're going to be doing this, having them check on you, you know, making sure that like you're being fully supported through this process, because it's a prescription, it's medication.
Yeah.
So it's just like anything that you're taking, you know, question it. Why? Like, should you be on something for anything for 15 years?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what has been so helpful for me in navigating all of this, you know, I recently, uh, uh, not recently, 18 months ago, went off birth control pills. Um, and then started, I got an IUD. I got an IUD about a month ago. So doing a lot of research and a lot of understanding of what that looks like. So what's been so instrumental for me in navigating all of this has been conversation with my other girlfriends. You
Mm-hmm.
know, has been frank conversation of like, how are you doing? What does your period look like? You know, how does it feel every month? You know, what have you seen the repercussions of whatever birth control method you're using? How has that been working out for you? And just being frank with each other and talking about this with each other, because
Mm-hmm.
what shame cannot exist in the light. And if we're talking about things that our society has deemed uncomfortable, well, we're talking about it proudly and we're talking about it with each other. We're sharing resources with each other. We're talking to each other about where there's lack of access and listening to each other, talk about where we're experiencing troubles, you know, putting money where our mouth is and putting money into foundations like Planned Parenthood to support people who don't have access to
Mm-hmm.
women's health in areas like Texas and the Midwest. I mean, this is the way that we can support each other in something that's so crucial for all of us. Reproductive health is so critical to our liberation, and therefore our liberation is tied to the access that other women have for their reproductive health.
Yeah, I mean, we're only as healthy as the women in our society. And
Mm,
I think it's really important too when you're talking about women's health. I think it just goes, it automatically, all of the political conversations, it just automatically goes to abortion and birth control and things like that. Like,
yeah,
women's health is so much more than that. But that is, so it's got to, we have, the conversation also needs to be broader so people on both sides know that you can't just take women also need other forms of support with their health. Like, they need access to everything to help them be healthy, whatever
yeah.
that looks like, you know. But that needs to be part of the conversation too. Is just like, there's so much more to women's health than just what is on the news.
Yes, and this is something that I know you've been navigating a lot in the past couple years. You've been navigating a lot of like health stuff and you've been going into doctors. And what I've seen you experience a lot is gaslighting and doctors and people that quote unquote know everything, right? Telling you, nope, that's not it. That's not a thing. And you've been telling them, no, 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 I want you to test me. I want you to check, and them saying no, that, you know, no, basically saying no, and you continuing to advocate for yourself. And that has been such an inspiration for me, is how you've continued to advocate for yourself in the medical system that can get so confusing and so complicated and so overwhelming. And we have to be standing up for ourselves. We have to be saying, I don't feel like I'm receiving care. You know, I feel like there's a bias going on here, or there's prejudice going on here, there's
Mm-hmm.
racism going on here. Like, we have to be able to say, like, I need you to be on my team. This is what I need. You're not listening to me.
Oh God. I mean, the last time, yeah, I mean, long story short, I've had some very interesting health challenges. Turns out it was Epstein-Barr all along, which is a virus that causes a lot of destruction in the body.
Mm,
Um, and going to all these different doctors and then being like, no, not going to test for that. And it literally took me saying, okay, I will sit here in your waiting room all day long until you like give me the lab work to go get tested for these other things. Cause I did a
yeah.
bunch of research on my own, but I hear it from my clients all the time. Like, we'll prepare questions, they'll print them out, they'll bring them. And then as soon as the doctor comes into the office, they feel so intimidated that
Yeah.
they forget that they even have that piece of paper.
Yeah.
So doctors are very smart. They've had years and years of schooling, but you know your body better than anybody else. And just like what I was going through, I'm like, I know something is off. Like, I don't know what it is, but I eat healthy, I sleep, I take care of myself. Like there's got to be something going on that like everyone else is missing because it's not in my head. And I think so often as women, we, God, how do I say this? Like we've been kind of like, it's all in your head. Oh, you're emotional. Like you just feel too much. Like, no, if you feel like something is off, something is off. Like, you know
Yeah.
your body. And I think it's just like important, like bring someone to the doctors with you. Like, if that's what it takes, right? Like, don't go by yourself. I say this with my parents too, and like what they're going through as they're getting older. Like, they always go to the doctors together because it's important that there's someone in there that's advocating for you, because unfortunately doctors really have like 7 to 10 minutes with you. They see you maybe once a year. They don't know what's going on.
Right.
So I think it's really comes back to like owning your power and just kind of knowing that like you know your body. Like if your boobs are really sore all the time, like okay, like they're sore all the time. Like it's not something your doctor should be like, oh, you're a woman, like you have sore boobs, like breasts or whatever. It's
Right.
just it's really interesting to, and it's really important to like just know that you know your body the best more than anybody. And I say that to my clients all the time. I'm like, I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you, but you know your body. Like you need to tell me if this is actually supporting you or not, because this could work for someone else, but it might not work for you. So you've got to tell me.
Right. Yeah. And I find that, one of the things that feels frustrating when I did research to get my IUD and I hemmed and hawed and I couldn't decide and there are all these options. And I'm like, why can't all men just get vasectomies and make it easy for me? And I finally decided on a copper IUD, so non-hormonal IUD. And I was researching like how much pain can I expect? How much bleeding can I expect? And I think what's so frustrating with women's health is that it does vary so much, that people can't really tell you. They're like, well, some people experience almost no pain, and
Mm,
some people experience a ridiculous amount of pain. And so no one knows what that will be like for you. And that can feel really scary and really daunting because you kind of want to know. You kind of want to know how to prepare for this experience. And you can't, know how to prepare if everyone's saying, well, it depends, it depends, it
I
depends.
know. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like that's the challenge, right? Like we're all individuals, right? We all have different pain tolerances. Like I have zero pain tolerance. Like I can't even like give blood. I like pass out. I have like it's horrible. Um so it's just it's one of those things where talk to as many people as possible and then try to go in there with an open mind so that whatever is actually happening, you can ask for the right support for what is actually going on.
Yeah.
But I think it's really like talk to your girlfriends, like talk to your parents, like talk to your aunts, like talk to women in your life that have gone through similar things. And I feel like the more that we talk about it, the more that there's like less of that taboo, and
Yes.
that it just becomes like normal. Like I feel like in conversations, like I just bring it up with my husband, like, and he still is like, and I'm like, oh God, get it over it. Like we've been together for a while. Like we're gonna be together for a lot much longer. Like you're gonna have to like
This
just
is actually something that I've been doing is I have conversations about my period and how I'm feeling with everybody in my life,
mm-hmm.
men and women. I'm not discerning because if you're with me, if you're having sex with me, if you're, like putting your intimate parts near my intimate parts, then that means that you're now gonna be open to hearing how my intimate parts are doing because a part of it is your responsibility. And hey, I would also want to know how your intimate parts are doing, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what intimacy looks like in relationships, is like knowing how each other are doing. And so, yeah, if we're sleeping together, if
Yeah.
there's a risk of me getting pregnant because of your penis, you're gonna know when I'm ovulating and when I'm bleeding and everything in between, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And it should be there's a lot of should be's, but the more that you have that conversation, the more that you tell me that you have that conversation with your partner, I'm like, oh, okay, awesome. So my conversations with my partner aren't as extraordinary as I thought they were.
Yeah.
It's just normal. It's just normal conversation. I mean, I just still remember when I got my period with my mom, I was like, oh, just don't tell dad. He can't know. It just started like at the
So
moment,
young.
the very moment I got it, I was
Wow.
like, oh, don't want my dad to know. And where does that come from, right? Like where is that stemming from is kind of the root of everything we talked about today, right? Is like why does that even start? Why was that an automatic response
Yeah.
at such a young age?
Yeah. And so for me, like it's uncomfortable, like I'm not saying it's the easiest thing, but I practice being unashamed and being confident in talking about what's happening with me to my dad, to my partners, to, the people that are in my life. And the more I practice being confident, sharing, the more I expand my container. Of being proud of who I am and being proud of my bodily functions and being proud of how incredible my vagina is. And it's
Mm-hmm.
connected to the motherfucking moon, right? Like, how cool is that?
Yep.
Like, we bleed every month and we get stronger. Like, we birth babies out of our vagina. It's just the wildest, the most amazing thing that our body gets to do. I'm not going to be ashamed of it.
Yeah. And we shouldn't be,
And we shouldn't be. And hopefully, the more that we take up space and we say, actually, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. Like I bleed and oops, I bled on the sheets. Like shit happens, I'm hopeful that men are going to be able to hold greater space for it, and luckily I've had really incredible partners who have been interested and who have wanted to know. My partners have always been like, mark it on the calendar when you're about to get your period. Like, I want to know, I want to be involved. And I love that. I love that men are more and more being like, yes, this is my process too. And I want to be a part of it. Because we're hopefully seeing a shift where there's a mutual respect for each other's bodily functions. And I think as we grow into that, then there's going to be more and more of understanding of all different representations and identifications with gender and sexuality. It's all on the spectrum. It just all needs to be talked about. It all needs to be out there.
Yeah. And the
So
more that it's out there, the more that it becomes comfortable, the more that it becomes a natural piece of the conversation, the less that there's that stigma, there's less that there's that taboo, and the more confident and empowered we feel every single day as women.
yeah, exactly. This conversation has been so rich. I really appreciate you and your wisdom in the world and the work that you do. I know my life has been so much better for it. And yeah, it's good to know there's people like you out there who are really doing the education and expanding our ability to reclaim our lives.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And this was just a beautiful conversation. So.